Hey everyone, welcome back to Jardev, and welcome to another episode of My Watch Is Ended. In this episode, I'll be giving my final thoughts on the game Kotodama, the 7 Mysteries of Fujisawa that I played on the Nintendo Switch. So just a bit of a recap, it's a visual novel with some match 3 puzzle elements in the game as well. It's $30 US, and I already played the first 30-ish minutes on John's watch. So I basically beat the game. I didn't quite finish the game, which I will explain why later, but I could not bring myself to finish the game. Overall, my thoughts are not good. It overall, thumbs down, negative review. It started off being, like kind of interested, went from kind of interested to a little bit bored, very intrigued at one point, and then totally let down, and it just kept going. It just kept getting worse and worse from that point, until I got to almost the end and just couldn't bother with it anymore. So I'm gonna try and leave some of the later game stuff pretty vague, just in case people want to play it themselves. I'm gonna have to spoil the first twist and one of the early plot points just to kind of get my thoughts across. But still on the overall review part, the artwork is really, really good actually. The character designs are pretty nice, the CGs are very good. The voice acting's all very good, sound design's pretty good, the music's great. But what totally lets this game down is the appallingly bad story and the match 3 puzzle minigames, which the very first time you play them, they're kinda neat, but over the course of the game, they range from just being a little bit annoying to being borderline impossible to beat and incredibly frustrating. So let's talk about kind of the broad story. Basically about halfway through the game, it's probably about 5 hours-ish, you basically get the bad ending and here's the spoiler, you get sent back in time to the very beginning of the game. The bit that I played in the John's Watch was the prologue part. So you get sent back to the very start of chapter 1. And when this happened, I was like, okay, that's really cool. But then I quickly realized that even though you were replaying the exact same game, it considered this as not replaying the game, so you couldn't actually skip any of the text that you'd already read before. If you played through a little bit of it, saved, or if you saved, played through a bit, and then reloaded the save, you could skip what you had just played. But as soon as you get sent back in time to chapter 1, you cannot skip anything. Even though, as I said, it's the exact same text, exact same writing that you had already read before. They do sprinkle in the occasional reference to you've gone back in time, but other than these very occasional, brief little references to this plot point, everything plays exactly the same. And this really makes me think that this time travel mechanic was kind of pushed into the game at the last moment, because like I said, there's a couple of sentences where it references being sent back in time, but other than that you just play through exactly the same way. Nobody seems to mention it, your character doesn't mention it, your character rediscovers things that they've already discovered before, and they don't say, oh yeah, I know this bit already. So it definitely makes me think that was kind of tacked on at the end. Another thing that makes me think this is basically one of the characters that you meet is responsible for you having to go back in time, and they turn out to be very evil, I think. But even when you've gone back in time and you're playing through all the same stuff again, your character just reacts as if they've only just met this character once again. Even though they know they're evil and they might kill you, you just treat them like someone completely normal. So that it definitely makes me think it was all kind of tacked on. If I had to guess, originally this started out as just a visual novel, chapters 1 through 7, and that was the game. And maybe they realized that, they couldn't charge $30 for that, so they had to add in the match 3 puzzle game, the Demon Fox stuff, the time travel, the evil character. It definitely feels like there was the 7 chapters, and then a bunch of extra stuff tagged on to try and justify the price and to keep you playing the game longer. So still talking about the story, it is bizarrely and pretty badly written. Your character is probably the most one-dimensional character in the world. No personality whatsoever, no growth over the entire visual novel. I can't help but make a couple of comparisons to World End Syndrome, because I'd played it just before this. your character in that also starts off very like wooden and monotone, but over the course of the game they grow and develop more of a personality. This one, they do not at all. Funnily enough, the teacher in Kotodama shares the exact same name as the teacher in World End Syndrome, and there's also a character called Yukino in Kotodama, like there's a character called Yukino in World End Syndrome. So the first mystery you uncover, that's the one that's being played on screen right now, is the mystery of the White Wolf. And spoiler for the first chapter, there's still 6 more afterwards if you want to play it. But it turns out that the White Wolf is just a dog that's being abused by a student there. The student, you encounter the student literally beating the dog with a wooden stick. And so what does your character do? He does the match 3 puzzle minigame where he undresses the person who's abusing animals. She admits to it, and he doesn't do anything. I have no idea why. And what makes this even weirder is that a couple of chapters later, the protagonist describes this other character as completely mental, all in caps, but for some reason they don't want to tell anyone that this person's abusing animals. And that's just one example of some of these serious moments. There's other ones like suicide and stuff that are just handled with all the grace of a rampaging bull in a china shop. Okay, and then on to the match 3 puzzle element. Like I said, it was kind of neat the first time you play it. Makes you think of like Honey Pop. Honey Pop's a great game. But after a while, they just really interrupt the flow of the story. Not that by the end of it you care about the story anymore. And they're just not enjoyable. Chapter 6, for example. Chapter 6 was probably the worst. Chapter 6, you basically clicked on location after location, looked at, talked with a person for a couple of lines in each location. You had to do the match 3 puzzle with the exact same character 3 times in that chapter. 2 of which, the first 2 were a minute apart probably from each other. The exact same puzzle for the exact same reason. The reason you do the puzzle is to force the truth out of these people. And you had to do it 3 times to the same character. It was exhausting and I hated it. And the reason I stopped playing the game right at the end is because right at the end of the game you have to do basically a boss fight. It's just a very hard puzzle. And the puzzle is very, very hard. I think I tried probably about 7 times or something over a couple of days. Just never even made it more than halfway through. And I was just like, I don't care. Don't care about the story anymore. Not enough to play through these stupid puzzles. It would be great if they could add an option to skip the puzzles entirely, because, like I said, like being able to skip the final boss one would be awesome. Being able to skip all 3 of those exactly the same ones in Chapter 6 would have been great. I'll put up a comparison on the screen, but like in the very first puzzle of the game, like you don't even have to think. You'll have like 30 extra moves by the end of the puzzle. You can just kind of click whatever and you'll get it done. But in the final boss puzzle one, you can strategize so carefully, but it all just comes down to luck. And that really sucks. That is not fun in a visual novel game. Oh, and also the demon fox thing that you have around with you should be cut from the game entirely. Basically, it just pops in every now and then to give some kind of one-liner or just to recap what you've just discovered. And it pops in very, very frequently. And by about halfway through, you're just like, fuck off, why is this thing still popping up and telling me what I already know? It's like the Rotom Dex from Sun and Moon. Hate that thing. So yeah, this is like $30. You could spend like another $20 more and get World End Syndrome. You could spend another $20 more and get Clanad on Switch. That'll last you 80 hours. So there you go, that's my final thoughts and review of Kotodama, the 7 Mysteries of Fujisawa on the Nintendo Switch. Thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!